guys. Okay, I'm just gonna do a video on this because I am getting so many questions, not just from our local area, but from all over the globe, now that this has made global news, about our Chinese spy balloon. And obviously, you guys, I do this because we're still not exactly sure what it is or what it's doing. However, gang, this is a human-made object, okay? This thing, when you look at it, is a human-made object. Now, I put originally on my Facebook post that when this thing was here in Billings, you could palpably feel it. The EMF field that appeared to be coming off of this thing, or this thing was following or whatever, was so huge and so palpable that it kind of scrambled your brain. And a lot of people here in Billings, Montana were reporting symptoms of heavy EMF saturation, metallic tastes in the mouth, being confused, being extremely anxious or very, very tired or extremely hyped up. I mean, all of these things are indicative of an EMF saturation. And EMF saturations are pretty common in our society. High saturations are not. And EMF stands for electromagnetic frequency, okay? So when I saw this thing, it was super huge. It was white. It was staying stationary in the sky. It was a windy day, but it wasn't moving. Now, granted, if something's high enough in the atmosphere, you're not going to see the tiny movement, but eventually you'll see it drift. This thing didn't look like it moved at all. So if it's a balloon, which it seems to be, it's got to have some ability to direct itself because it was going against current. It just was being completely stationary. There was a huge amount of EMF coming off of it. And when I was looking at this thing, towards the end of its stay, it kind of phased out. You know, it kind of got really kind of purpley and transparent and disappeared, which is, of course, an earmarker for the craft that fly from Sirius AB. Also, the heavy EMF radius off of it. Also, at a certain point when I was watching this thing, it kind of pulled off and divided into two orbs, and then it came back into one orb. And again, I've actually caught that phenomenon before on some video footage of a UFO that I took from an Alaska Airlines flight. It's on YouTube. And if you look at UFO from Alaska Airlines flight, you'll actually see that the silver looking orb divides into two and goes back into one. All these things. Well, I'm not going to labor the point of the Sirius AB craft because this thing is not that. This is a human-made object, very, very obviously. Now, here's what's weird about this, though, okay? You've got all these people in Billings, Montana, reporting extremely high EMF saturation symptoms. You've also got them shutting our airport down for a 50-mile radius. And when I had originally done my television interview for KTVQ, when they didn't know what this was yet, the reporter asked me, do you know why they would shut down the airport? Because nobody else knows why. And one of the things that I placed out there is, yeah, if you have an object in the sky or anything, anywhere, that is kicking off huge amounts of electromagnetic frequency, huge EMF radiuses, so much so that human beings on the ground are having metallic tastes and getting very, very anxious and confused and all these things, you don't want airplanes flying through that because high EMF bursts will fry electronics. And don't take my word for it. If you go onto the Department of Homeland Security, they list a bunch of terrorist bombs and weapons that they look for, one of them being a high-yield EMF device that goes way high in the atmosphere and releases really large charges of EMF. Now, obviously, whatever this object was not releasing enough EMF to shut down electronics here in Billings. However, when the reporter asked me, do I know why they would ground the aircraft? My answer was, well, if I knew something was kicking off a ton of EMF way high in the atmosphere, I sure wouldn't want airplanes flying through that because it could compromise the aircraft's electronics, okay? Well, now we know that it's not a UFO. China is saying, yes, this is our object, and oh, it just got blown off course. We don't know what it is. They know what it is. Come on, China. People, come on. Yet, what is fascinating about this, gang, is not whether it's a UFO or not. It's about how we're treating this object. Now, hang in here with me for a couple more minutes, okay? Our Pentagon, God bless you, Pentagon, all right, came out and said, we're not shooting this thing down because we're afraid that it will fall on population bases and kill people. Okay. Except for the fact, gang, if you live in Montana and you see where this thing floated in from, it's floating over areas where there's absolutely no people. Like no people. For 100 square miles, no people. Okay? If there is one stray house in a big radius like that, in all those wheat fields and rolling hills and mountains, and the United States military needed to shoot something down, they would do what they do if there is danger of satellite wreckage falling, okay? They would go to that person, they would say, hey, guess what? We have to move you. There may be some stuff that's gonna fall on your head. We're really sorry. We're monitoring the situation. So this doesn't really fly with me because it also came across Canada. And up in Alberta, up in Calgary, up in these Canadian provinces that are just north of the United States here, north of our Montana border, they are super rural. Okay, yes, they have some big cities in them, but then there's nothing in between, just like Montana. So I'm kind of not buying that they couldn't shoot it down because it would hurt people. I mean, hello, have you been to Montana? You know why the Montana state initials are MT? Because it's empty, okay? We're the fourth largest state in the union, and we house tons and tons of nuclear silos because there's nothing here, all right? Plus, the way this balloon cut down, it cut down, whether it went down through Wyoming, where there's less than there is in Montana, or it cut down the Dakotas, which, by the way, are also housing our nuclear arsenal because there's nothing. See what I'm getting at? It's kind of weird, this excuse of not shooting it down. The other thing that's weird about this is the phenomenon. Why is a balloon kicking off so much EMF that it scrambles your brains and makes people have metallic tastes in their mouth or makes people so tired they're going to bed at 6 o'clock in the afternoon? Why? Why would a balloon be doing that? Well, here's a prospective thought, gang. Maybe the balloon isn't doing that. Maybe the balloon is tracking something that it picked up way off our coast over here, and it cut across Canada, and it came through the northern part of the United States, and it's making a diagonal down through St. Louis. Maybe the balloon is tracking something with an extremely high EMF yield, okay? Now, that still does not explain the phasing out, the purple phase out that I had an opportunity to look at. It doesn't explain the orb busting into two different orbs and going back into one orb. I guess maybe one could say maybe the sun set enough that it just, made it look like it was phasing out. Although, again, that's a very common issue with your Sirius AB spaceships, if you want to call them that, the phasing portion. Also, guys, the splitting into two, I guess maybe we could have had such a severe atmospheric disturbance in that perfectly cloudless Montana evening that was windy that would make it look like it broke into, but that seems like a lot of self-gaslighting, okay? When we know that the Sirius craft, they do that for a number of reasons. So I'm not saying this is a UFO, but let's just posit this. It's weird we haven't shot it down over the most rural parts of our country, okay? It's weird that Canada didn't shoot it down over the most rural parts of Canada. Well, some of the most rural parts. Canada has crazy rural parts up north. It's weird. It's weird. So the only reason we wouldn't do that maybe is because we knew the balloon was coming. We knew it was tracking something weird. We too might have been tracking it. Maybe China called us up and said, hey guys, we have this weird giant EMF disturbance that we're tracking with this thing. It's on its tail. It's going to go right into your airspace. That seems kind of far-fetched, but it's super far-fetched to me why we're letting a supposed spy satellite cut over our nuclear arsenals and keep going all the way to the East Coast. That's super strange. And not shooting it down. Come on! We have the strongest military in the world. We have the most precise missiles on the planet. And I do understand, guys, just for you guys saying, well, but wait a minute. If you shoot it down, obviously, guys, it's not going to fall down in a straight line, okay? If something's that high in the atmosphere and you shoot it down, especially with those types of array components that are under there, it can spin, it can go 50 miles in any direction, all right? So maybe that's why they didn't shoot it down by Billings, because it could spin and go off course and hit Billings. However, guys, the sticking point I have with the whole China spy balloon story is not that it's clearly a balloon. It clearly has an array underneath of it. It's clearly not a UFO. However, what accompanied this object were attributes that, unless China has reverse engineered some off-world technology, which could happen because the United States has done that. We've done that for our own military gain. So maybe China has reverse engineered something that takes on the attributes of this off-world tech and they put it on a balloon. But here's my question to you also. And to quote my dear friend Donnie Gale out in St. Louis, why would China have a spy balloon that is so glaringly bright in the sky, it looks like a massive, obvious Death Star, be floating over the country's nuclear arsenals on purpose when it could easily be seen by everybody? That's not very spy-like. Like, that's a real bad spy idea. And why would China do that, knowing that we full tilt could go up there and take that balloon and look at their technology? What does China not want us to know? What they're doing. What does China not want us to have access to? All of their world secrets and tech. So why are they floating a balloon that blew off course with Chinese tech that happens to be trailing along with a giant EMF yield? Now, either it's tracking something that's creating that, or it itself is creating that. But it makes no common sense at all if you look at the tensions between the United States and China. None. Neither do the attributes that accompanied this particular balloon. The phasing, the breaking into two orbs, that doesn't make any sense either. So maybe, I posit, an additional line of thought might be that maybe there were two sets of phenomenon that were observed, and maybe this balloon is what we got the picture of. Now, again, this all seems like a lot of hullabaloo. And I know there's a lot of folks out there that are just like, what? It's a China spy balloon. End of story. Okay, cool. But if you were in Billings, Montana, and you saw this object, and you saw it do all the weird stuff it did, and you felt the massive EMF yield off of it, and I was not the only one, you guys. I know I'm the psychic, the medium, blah, 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 but you guys, I wasn't the only one. There was a wonderful reporter who did a story about this object, and she was getting reports from tons of people that mirror mine, including but not limited to people seeing the object divide into two and then go back into one. Now, can I explain that for a human-made balloon with an array hanging under it? Hell no. That is, all of those are characteristics of a Sirius AB mid-range craft, all of them. Can I explain them for a balloon? Hell no. Can China have tech we might not be aware of? Sure. The other thing that I would throw in here to possibly maybe explain the super high EMF yields that seem to accompany the presence of this object would be that maybe the United States military, maybe our Air Force or Navy or whoever scrambled those jets, I don't know, sorry, armed forces people, I didn't check into that. Maybe those jets that were flying circles around that thing for such a long time, so long, you guys, that they had a refueling craft in the air with those jets up there. That's how long they were up there, okay? So we were burning a lot of fuel to keep rolling circles around this thing. Maybe those military jets had some sort of intense signal scrambling something that they were somehow aiming at the balloon if they were worried that the Chinese spy balloon was picking up information and beaming it back to China somehow. And maybe that heavy signal interruption that was being generated, potentially, maybe, by these aircraft might cause that feeling of a lot of distress on the ground. But that's even hard to believe there because that would be very directed at something. And the field of that, I don't think would be as high or low. The anti-transmission field or whatever. I don't even know if planes can do that, you guys. I'm just trying to figure out what could potentially cause such a high EMF yield from such a high altitude. So, and I don't even know if that's a thing, the whole airplane scrambling signal. I'm just attempting to throw positive theories out there. So it's important to know that when we see something in the sky, those of us who work in ufology, you go down the list of things that fit what you've already observed. And that's what I did in my original Facebook post. I said this has identical attributes to these craft from Sirius AB. It's also important in ufology, as new information comes in, to factor the new information in, yet still look at the original factors that really made you think it was a UFO in the first place, right? And then kind of work backwards from there and see what the heck's going on. So here is my conclusion. This is obviously a man-made object, a human-made object from China, okay? It's claimed it. What we can't explain is the unreal amount of EMF that came off of it that so many of our Billings, Montana residents saw. We can't explain the splitting of the craft and it coming back together. We can't really explain it just disappearing into midair. These are things we can't explain if it's a balloon. All right? I can't explain that for a balloon. Unless it's not actually the balloon we're tracking or talking about, and the EMF yield didn't come from the balloon, and the United States government or somebody maybe knows that, and maybe we're just trying to actually get along with China for 5 seconds because they've been tracking this thing for thousands of miles, and we're sharing information. Which sounds scary because we're not supposed to share with China, so maybe it's easier to say it's a Chinese spy balloon. Yeah, that's all I got. If I didn't see what I saw and felt what I saw and didn't talk to dozens and dozens and dozens of other people that didn't see and feel and observe and experience what I saw, then I would just run with Chinese spy balloon. But it'll be interesting to see how this unfolds. Is that object a UFO? No. Did UFO-like attributes accompany the object? Yes. Did those attributes have to be generated from that object? Not necessarily. So the plot thickens, gang. Much love from the big sky state of Montana. Keep it real, you guys.